Hello friends, welcome to Salo Happy Home, and I'm happy to be here with you today on this very chilly 15 below, temperatures 27 below wind chill in this great state of Minnesota on this blustery Monday, January 26. Wow, what a crazy start to a new year, huh? Well, as people are digging their way out of this massive snowstorm and trying not to freeze to death because it's deadly temperatures out there. There's been, of course, all of the chaos here in Minneapolis with yet another protester inserting themselves into a situation where they were not lawfully allowed. They should not have lawfully been. I guess onlookers said that the latest rioter completely misread a situation or didn't have all the information, just assumed he knew what was going on and thought he was going to be the better for it. I guess he wanted street cred for being some kind of riot hero and got himself killed. In response to this, the DOJ put out a stern letter to Tim Walz. I read the letter. It's a joke. You want stern? You send him a letter on your letterhead and clip art a little pair of handcuffs in there and tell him time's up. No. It was just a regurgitation of the dialogue and script and rehearsed statements that all of them have been saying since the get-go. And I listened to every single press conference over the weekend that took place regarding this latest shooting. And word for word, listen to anybody from Trump's administration, like Kristi Noem, whom I love, but she was reading from a script, the ICE and Border Patrol and all of the people who are not on the side of the rioters, who are not one of the Walz syndicate cartel that's here. Those individuals, I mean, literally, word for word, sentence for sentence, they all said identically the same statement. I realized that after I was listening to Kristi Noem. I went, I've heard this somewhere before, and I haven't seen this press conference yet. Well, lo and behold, I listened again to an older press conference I'd heard earlier in the morning, and sure as shit, word for word, line for line, identical script. It wasn't heartfelt. It wasn't human response. It was a script that they were all given. And I get, to preserve evidence and ongoing investigation, all that bullshit. They got to keep things light. They got to keep things tight. But I have completely lost my faith in Pam Bondi and her Department of Justice, and they need to resign immediately. And here's why. Well, first of all, they're still continuing to completely and totally botch the Epstein file case. Those witnesses, those victims need a clean, precise, quick process. And all they're getting is press conferences and witnesses who are ignoring subpoenas, federal subpoenas, and still walking the streets, getting paid, and enjoying the freedoms of free Americans. First, their names are not redacted, then they're redacted, then they're not redacted. Then they have to go out and do press conferences and take on the burden and responsibility of their side of the story when it should be up to law to do that. Their attorneys, the DOJ, they should be protecting these victims. They shouldn't have to go out and do their own legwork. This is absolutely, utterly ridiculous. Epstein was a filthy pedophile. Bill Clinton was a longtime friend of his, who they have photos of him in hot tubs with young minor girls. You don't have to be a math whiz to put that two and two together. So, okay. You know, Pam Bondi's new at the DOJ thing. Okay, I get it. We'll let her have a pass on this one. But this catastrophe in Minneapolis is the last straw for me. Trump's administration, in the last year of his administration, 2019 to 2020, they knew about Ilhan Omar, and they began and opened investigations into this bullshit, all of this fraud. 6 years later, she's still in Congress, making the rule of law. She's still getting paid with our tax dollars. Walz, Ellison, Frey, all of them. They're still running free and loose on the streets. They've had 6 years now because Biden was investigating it. Of course, we know that the Feeding Our Future did come to fruition. People were arrested and indicted and charged and convicted and put in jail. But the kingpins are still running wild and free and holding very high, powerful positions. And they've had 6 years, thanks to technology, the internet, transparency, which is what they brag about all the time in the Trump administration. Because of that bullshit, the Walz crime syndicate has had 6 years now to alter evidence, remove witnesses, pay witnesses off, send them to countries where there's no extradition. They've had 6 years to get millions and millions and millions of dollars out brazenly at the airports. And the worst part is Walz, Frey, Ellison, Omar are still getting paid every month from taxpayer dollars, Minnesota state taxpayer dollars. They are still in power. They are still running wild and free, and they are still inciting communism and violence in our state. And what does Pam Bondi do? Ooh, she sends a stern warning. It wasn't a warning. I read that fucking letter. There was no threats. There was no warnings. There was no time's up. There was nothing. She just cited every statement and every word that Walz and Frey have said. She cited how they've been trying to get this under control and blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. You're regurgitating every press conference and every news interview you've had in the past 13 months. That's all you did. You have done nothing. And because you have done nothing, you have not cut the head off that snake. You get those people out of power, and some of this will go away. These riots, these violent attacks and incursions. Why? Because as well, every day that those fuckers are still sitting in office here in Minnesota, the rioters and the anarchists and Antifa, it's just reinforcing their feelings that Walz, Ellison, and Frey might be right, that they may have some legitimacy to their claims, which they do not. They are liars. They are antichrists. They are filthy criminals. But Minnesota, you're still paying their paychecks every month. It cannot be emphasized enough. Excuse me, I have a little heater in my office. I need to up the heat on because it is uncomfortably cold in my office. You can't just sit there and write some letter and think that's going to help. What'd you do, email it? Or did you actually put a stamp on it and send it by, American Express or UPS and throw it at his door? Nothing in that letter legitimized what's happening here. Nothing in that letter was a warning that We're coming for you. And there's been 6 years now. So they've had 6 years to cover their tracks. Under the new Biden administration, Trump 2.0, they've had 13 months now to cover up while still getting paid and still being allowed to initiate the rule of law, dictate the rule of law. So Pam Bondi, I am asking you to do the right thing by the American people, by the people here in Minnesota. Admit that you have failed. Admit that you had, by the time you got here, 4 or 5 years of absolute evidence that you had enough to indict these people, and you have failed to do it. Hell, you can't even honor your own warrants. Federal warrants issued to the Clintons, and the Clintons just wipe their asses with them and laugh. Presidential immunity, my ass. That immunity went out the window. First of all, he's not in office anymore. Secondly, what they do while president matters. I, as a Minnesotan whose family has been completely divided and torn apart by this massive, violent incursion in our state, by misguided, misinformed, uneducated people and criminals, I'm done. You've had 13 months now to get your shit together. And you had 5 years of evidence on your desk on day one. And all you care about, all anybody cares about, is dicking around the victims of Epstein. Epstein's dead. Good riddance. Let those poor victims move on. Close that door and move on. And concentrate on the immediate crisis here in Minneapolis. But that, I know that's a lot to ask, and it won't happen until you resign. So Pam Bondi, I am asking you and your assistant DOJ to resign. I am asking President Trump to demand her resignation for failure to keep Americans safe from harm, from fraud, from robbery, from theft, from violence. You have done nothing. And so I want you out. I did not vote for 13 months of having Epstein cram down everybody's throats. I did not vote for the Clintons to ignore federal subpoenas, violate the law, laugh at you while they're driving their God knows what kind of cars past the White House. I did not vote for Ilhan Omar, Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, or Jacob Frey. And I most certainly did not vote for these riots, these shootings, this insurrection. I didn't vote for this. I believed you, Pam Bondi, when you said that you were going to, crack down and get to the bottom and do this and do that. And you've done fucking nothing. And talking down to Americans by, well, you don't have all the information. It's not that easy. Yes, it is that easy. You've got 6 years of evidence that easy. People get cuffed on the side of the road every day simply because they happened to be on the side of the road when the cops were doing an investigation. People get arrested for drunk driving all the time, have their cars towed and get put in jail, only to find out the blood test came back and they weren't drunk at all. But we have to suffer through that process. We have to suffer through accusations, arrests, humiliation, loss of jobs, loss of pay, loss of family. Our lives get turned upside down for simple misunderstandings. And these fuckers, these crooked politicians, why do you think nobody has faith in the political system anymore? Because they don't have faith in the openly brazen crimes that are being committed while we're being laughed at. And nobody's doing anything about it. The alleged right people that are going to fix it. RFK tried to fix it, and he was shot for it. But he kept the fight up. He wasn't afraid. I don't know what you're hiding behind, but it certainly isn't a desk of indictments or warrants for arrests. So, to President Trump, I implore you to demand her resignation or immediate action. And Pam Bondi, if you really loved America, if you really loved the American people, if you were really concerned about what was happening here in Minnesota, one, you would show up, which you haven't. Two, you would resign, or you would take action. And I know I speak for many Minnesotans who have reached the end of their ropes. We're done. We're done dealing with these lies and these, oh, I'm going to be so big and bad and I'm scary. No, you're not. I've seen more tongue wagging out of a dog. I mean, really, come on. That letter was a joke. There was no warning in that letter. There's no respect for you. They don't respect you. If you were so terrifying and so great and powerful at your job, the Clintons would not, they wouldn't be spitting in your face and laughing at you and tearing up your warrants. The rioters wouldn't be here. They would respect the rule of law. The Fab Four Walls Cartel Syndicate here in Minnesota would be gone by now. None of this is happening because they don't respect you. You're a joke to them. You're a joke because you're not doing your job. So get off your ass and do your job, or the next letter should be a resignation. And until next time, do good and be good.